So I invite our next speaker, Mr. Ruby Naka. He's one of our alumni from CMC Velos. I've known him since 2002, 2003. I've always actually known him as a very great motivator. One of the first alumni reunion which we did in CMC Vellore, he was the person behind that. But beyond that, I think though he trained as a physiotherapist, he had a very strong passion for the cause of adoption, and he himself, having adopted 2 children, he's been a great advocate for adoption. So he's been working multiple things related to that, right from personal one-on-one counseling. I was actually a beneficiary of his counseling when I decided to go through adoption. He was the person I reached out to, and then he gave us a very clear idea about the whole process, do's and don'ts, which is very essential actually. He also runs a very beautiful organization called as Hope House that deals with with orphaned individuals and children, and he focuses on their education. Over to you, Ruby, to speak about the role of adoption.
Thank you, Dr. Sundar, and good evening to all of you. Since the earlier speakers have already spoken about the statistics and numbers, I'm not going to go deep into the numbers, but I, as an adoptive father of 2 children, including one with special needs, we adopted them while we were living outside of India as an inter-country adoptive family. It always bothered me whenever I looked at the numbers of the children with special needs being adopted by inter-country adoptive families. There's nothing wrong with them, but I always used to wonder, why is it that not many families want to adopt these children? And then as I processed information, I came to a point where I started to question myself, is it necessary that we have to promote in-country adoption of children with special needs? Then I reached a point to realize why it is essential. It is a fundamental principle of adoption that is stated in subregulation 3 of regulation 3 of adoption regulations, which says that any child has to be, as much as we possibly can, be placed in adoption in his or her own socio-cultural environment. And that again, why is it that we have to do this? It is in the best interest of the child, which again is a fundamental principle of adoption. So I'm convinced that promoting in-country adoption of children with special needs is to honor and respect the rights of children with special needs. So, if they are the fundamental principles, why doesn't many adoptions with children with special needs or hard to place children take place within India? So as I was looking at it, I came up with 3 problems. There may be more, but I just want to present 3. The first one is the financial resources that are needed to address the classified special needs. If you look at the adoption regulations document, in Schedule 8, it has classified 70 different conditions under 4 categories: physical, mental, emotional, and other. Those are the 4 categories. And in those 4 categories, there are 70 different conditions. Almost every one of them requires enormous amount of resources to address. If at all there is a child with one of those special needs, it requires enormous amount of resources to address them. Now, the second problem is, now you have identified a child with special needs, which requires enormous amount of resources, and then he is an orphaned or abandoned or surrendered child, so we have to send them to a specialized adoption agency, where they have limited resources. If you look at Annexure 9 of ICPS document, where it speaks about the funding for specialized adoption agency, there is about 17.85 lakhs to take care of 10 children for the year. And in that 17.85 lakhs rupees, 2.4 lakhs is what is allocated for childcare management, which is a very small amount. And there is no mention of, or there is no provision in that document for any kind of funding to take care of children with special needs. In that, I'm talking about the special needs that are there in the Schedule 8 of the point 1 I'm talking about. As much as the specialized adoption agency may want to do the right thing for these children, there is not much they can do because there are limitations in terms of the financial resources. And then the second part of it is limitation of human resources. The same document pays for 6 ayahs at the rate of 6,000 rupees per month. And for a 6,000 rupees, you can imagine what kind of people we can hire in terms of taking care of special needs. Of course, there is a funding for nurse and a part-time doctor, but there could be more, like for example, a counselor or a therapist or something like that, but it is not there. So as much as the specialized adoption agency may want to take care of these children in the right way, they're limited with the financial resources, they're limited with the human resources. And the third problem why I think not many Indians want to adopt children with special needs is India-specific socio-cultural issues. I can just share my own example. When we were adopting our second child who was born with special needs, our families were not very open to it. It's not because they didn't like the child. They were thinking in terms of the future of this child. What would happen? Will she be able to go to school? Will she be independent? Will she be able to play along with other kids? Will she be able to work? Will she be able to get married? They were thinking that far ahead. So it is in our culture that, such sensitivities exist in us. So we are little hesitant to venture out into adopting children with special needs. There, as I said, there may be more, but these are the primary reasons that I thought are the reasons why we don't get families to adopt with special needs. So what is the way forward? Now we have identified the problem. So how do we take this forward to fix it? I'm coming up with the suggestion that a government has to establish an exclusive specialized institution to cater to the adoptable children with special needs. This specialized institution is not out of the purview of CARA regulations. It is in the sub-regulation 4 of regulation 49 of regulations governing adoptions of CARA says that the children who are adoptable and who cannot be placed in adoption can be looked after at this specialized institution. As far as I know, I don't think there is any state which has such a kind of a specialized institution, specially catering to the children, adoptable children with special needs. So this institution I'm proposing ought to be developed on a PPP model, private-public partnership. So in that, there are going to be 3 partners: government, NGOs, corporates, as partners. So what would be the features of this specialized institution to take care of children with special needs that are adoptable? First one, I say it has to be a recognized specialized adoption agency because it already has a funding provision under ICPS document. So we don't want to lose that. And also they have the license to place children in adoption. So if a state has number of specialized adoption agencies, they could choose one to designate it as a specialized institution catering to the children with special needs. Second one I say is NGO that has access to healthcare facilities and has the wherewithal to build partnerships. Minimum, I'm expecting, kind of special needs that it has in the Schedule 8, I'm expecting an NGO to have an access to at least a tertiary level healthcare facility with rehabilitation and mental health facilities associated with it, or even it can be an independent facility available in the same town that they can visit. And also they should have the wherewithal to be able to build partnerships to raise resources to be able to look after the needs. And the third one I say is, at least, if you could have more of such kind of specialized institutions, well and good, but if not, at least each state should consider to have one such kind of a specialized institute to cater to the children with special needs. And they should be willing to do inter-country adoption. As much as we may invest in such children to promote in-country adoption, we know sometimes children don't get adopted. So in such case, we should have the option for such children to be able to give in for inter-country adoption. And the funding part, this is the most important part. Such kind of an institution requires a lot of funds. If you look at the ICPS document under State Child Protection Society's budget, there is general grant in aid to the tune of 15 to 30 lakhs, depending on the number of districts a state has. If the state has 15 districts or less, they're entitled for 15 lakhs per year. And if the state has 30 districts or more, state is entitled for 30 lakhs rupees. So there is funding, and this is actually classified as general grant in aid for innovative projects. So I like to see this as an innovative project because we are catering to the children to promote in-country adoption. So this money could be used. So now we have identified a specialized institution. Now I'd like to add a few more processes to the process that CARA has already laid out in the regulations. The pre-adoption process that I would like to suggest is the treatment and rehabilitation of a special needs child ought to be completed at an optimum level at least before we place the child for adoption, so that we could present the child in a good light to increase the chances for this child to be able to get adopted within India. And during adoption, if adoption agency can handle it, I like to propose to do a no-fee adoption, because, of course, this is also encouraged by CARA in the regulations, that they say that if you can do without taking adoption fee, you could do it. I'm saying for all the families who are coming forward to adopt children with special needs, do a no-fee adoption so that this would be an incentive for the families. And the post-adoption, what I want to say is to give health insurance. When we adopted our child, when we brought her home, it is a constant thought, what will happen? We had her operated on, and then our thinking was, will it work or not? Will there be complications? Will she be able to walk? All kinds of fears we had. But the greatest leveler for us at that time was health insurance. We had a great health insurance which paid for everything. In our state, in the state of Tamil Nadu, for all the BPL families, the government extends health insurance. For these few families, if we could extend health insurance from the day of adoption for the first 5 years, so that first 3 years, not only for the child, but for the whole family, I think it would work as a great motivator or incentive for the families to come forward to adopt. And the last part, where it says modification, this is where I like to make use of the expertise of PACT India to partner with NGOs. PACT India, I was talking to Ruben, and he tells me that children who are to be placed in adoption, and if they have any kind of needs that we can address, they would like to address. For example, if there is a child who is going to be in a wheelchair, PACT India probably could provide a wheelchair. If they need a home modification, PACT India could come and do a home modification. If they need a ramp at the school, if the child needs a homeschooling computer, whatever it needs, all these things are essential to convey the right kind of a message to the family to say that we have taken care of the child's healthcare needs up to an optimum level, and you don't have to pay the adoption fee. We have health insurance to cover the future needs, at least for the first 3 years, and we're going to take care of all the home modification or wherever the modifications are needed to be made for this child. So please come forward to adopt. So what is the next step? I say, we have the specialized institution provision in the CARA regulations, and we have the funding available in ICPS, which means this is in the purview of the current existing regulations. So all that we need is the will of the government and the willingness of NGO or NGOs to begin this kind of an organization. And that's all I have for you today. And if there are any questions, I would be more than happy to answer.